All right, welcome everybody. Tonight is Wednesday, September 16th, 2020. This is the Upper Dublin School District Finance Committee, and I will call the meeting to order. We have the full committee here. That is myself, Amy Francic, Mike Henderson, and Stan Ropsky. Mr. Ropsky's camera is not working, but he is here. We also have a fairly full complement of other board members and appropriate administrators. So welcome everybody. Before we get started, let me turn this over briefly to Ms. Francic.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. I wanted to address a board matter prior to the start of this evening's meeting, and specifically it has to do with the conduct of one of our board members, Mr. Ropsky. It came to my attention last week that there was some email communication between Mr. Ropsky and a community member that was outside of what we would expect as appropriate in terms of the civility level between the board and the community. That being said, I wanted to give Mr. Ropsky an opportunity tonight to address this matter. And Mr. Ropsky, you're free to
go
okay,
ahead. Thank you, Mrs. President. I regret very much the distraction that I have created for this board and this community with any of my comments. And for that, I sincerely apologize to the board and to the community and to anyone whom a comment was directed. I wish to assure the board that it will have my full cooperation with respect to abiding to the civility policy. Ultimately, we're all here on the same page, the same team, motivated by the same objective, which is the highest quality, safest education for our students. Going forward, I hope we can put our focus and energy back on them because they deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ropsky. I will share with the community that we have undertaken several discussions with Mr. Ropsky. I also spoke with the community member who was affected by the situation, and I would really like to turn all of our attention to moving forward with positivity and civility. I will also finally state, though, that if anything like this were to happen again, we would have to take more formal measures, and we take this very, very seriously, as I hope you can tell. Mr. Sirota, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you both. Resuming the agenda, Mr. Leckman, are there any announcements?
There are no announcements this evening.
All right, thank you. We do have minutes from our August 19th meeting. Are members of the committee prepared to approve those minutes?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay, Amy, yes?
Yes, sorry, unmuting.
All right, so those minutes are approved and they will appear on the legislative meeting agenda as an informational item. Moving on to the reports and recommendations, we'll start with a Sandy Run Middle School update. Mr. Lester, I assume.
Yes, give an update on the progress that has been made over the past month. They're moving at a really good pace. Everything is still right where it needs to be schedule-wise. Some of the major work that has been done, you can see driving around the building, the brick walls are going up, the brick exterior on the classroom wing. I went past I was on site today looking at A classroom wing. That's the closest to the existing cafeteria. The front portion of that building is just about completed, and they actually started to install windows in those classrooms where the brick has been installed. So they're moving along very well there. Staying on the classroom wing, on the first floor, both A and B, the studs are in place for the classrooms. They're starting to put the drywall in place. Rough-ins are in place for mechanical, electrical, and the sprinkler contractor has started as well. Some of the other progress in the classroom wing is the center stair tower is in place. Hopefully soon they'll have some concrete poured on the stair treads, so next time we do a tour of the board, we can go up and down the levels, not have to worry about any ladders or trying to access a different building from different levels. So that is moving along very nicely. The roofing contractor has been making great progress. Section A, the classroom wing, the roofing material is on. The curbs are in place for all the mechanical equipment to start setting. So that's just about watertight on the roof of that section of the building. Section B, the steel went in today. They finished up on the steel for the roofing structure, Section B, and they should be having the deck put down in the next few days, and then the roofer is just going to move right from Section A right into Section B. And also ready for roofing is the auditorium and the main gym and the area above the offices, Area C. They're all ready for roofing, so the roofer has a good crew on site, moving right along. Some of the other items, foundations, are just about complete. The only foundation left is for the auxiliary gym. They haven't poured those yet because that has been the staging area for all of the material, all the steel that's coming in. So there's plenty of work being completed on the site. Like I mentioned before, they're right where they need to be. Schedule's looking really good.
Great, thank you. And I'll just remind the community that all of the pictures that are scrolling past on your screen now are also attached to the agenda. And I believe we have a new drone footage video ready to publish sometime soon if it hasn't already been. Mr. Leckman, anything to call our attention to in the budget update?
Yeah, so nothing specific in the budget itself as we've looked at it the last couple of months. So everything's pretty much the same as it's been. I did want to call your attention to a third page that I added onto the budget document. One of the things I wanted to make sure to add so we can make sure to track progress on it is the information about our escrow accounts that we have with the Upper Dublin Township. That was a requirement for the project. Just to provide a status on how that's trending on a monthly basis. So this will be a regular report that we'll have. As a reminder, there are two separate escrow accounts that are required by the township for this project. One was related to permits and inspections, and that's the top one there. So there's an accounting of all the information related to our permits and inspections escrow account. Those expenditure buckets are buckets that I've created. Again, the township gives us all of the details and information around what we're being charged from that account, and then I've sort of bucketed them in big categories to track them. So you can see our account balance is about little under $420,000, and the estimated cost for this project was around $900,000 for the project. The second one is land development, and the land development one is more of a reimbursement account. So we had to put $4.4 million into an account basically to cover all the land development work that needs to happen on the site. And then as major work gets done associated with land development, we work with Dewey as our project construction manager, and we submit reimbursements to the township. So you can see on this report that we have received one reimbursement to date. That was in February for $450,000. And then we do generate interest in that account. So again, this will be a report that will continue to be part of this budget update going forward.
All right, thank you for that update. Any comments or questions from the committee or the board? Art, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that originally when we were talking with the township, the question about interest was raised because originally it was an interest-free account. But I think because of Andy's work and some other board members, the township did not object to it collecting interest. And it's already we've accumulated $55,000, which I think is a significant sum of money. So I'm really pleased, and I would like to thank Andy for making that happen.
Yeah, of course, interest percentages are absurdly low right now. With $55,000 is
Sure, better than nothing. 55,000 is great.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you for that update. We will move on to the parking lots paving bid. Bob?
Yes, this is the project that started out with Hunt Engineering doing the drawings for us, doing a survey of the parking lots, Fort Washington, rear parking lot at Jarretttown, and portion of the rear parking lot at Thomas Fitzwater. this was a very aggressive project, just trying to take advantage of some downtime and some pricing. So everything really had to fall into place to make this happen. So we did go out to bid. Actually, I should mention a little bit more of the evaluation we did. The evaluation by Hunt Engineering was helpful for us. We were originally going into this project thinking we would have to mill the entire paved areas. That wasn't the case. There's only certain sections that need to be milled, but they also found some areas that need full depth repair. So it'll have to be dug down to the subsurface and built back up again. So those areas were noted on the drawings. So we did go out to bid. Bids were opened yesterday. Very disappointed to see we only had 2 bidders on this list that showed up. I talked to other prospective bidders. Time constraint was their biggest problem. They just have too much work right now. They weren't able to give us a price for the project. So we only ended up with 2 bidders, Associated Paving and T. Schaefer Contractors. So Associated Paving came in the lowest, $143,750, and their bid was 40% lower than T. Schaefer at $224,070. I immediately called Associated Paving. We started to discuss the scope of work, and a significant portion of overlay paving was missed outside of the areas that were being milled. So there's some confusion on the actual scope of the work that they missed, which allowed us with only 1 bidder bidding the entire job, T. Schaefer. Again, this is a bid I expected more contractors on since we only had 2 bids. At this time, I am recommending that we reject all bids and rebid this to give us all the contractors a little more time, bring in additional potential contractors, and schedule this project, bid it again in December, and probably do an award in February and put us on the list for the beginning of summer 2021. It'll give us more time. It'll also give us time to schedule additional meetings with the bidders. We didn't do a mandatory pre-bid meeting this time around, trying to work around all the COVID issues and the time frame of just trying to get this project on board. Those were all issues at play here. So that is my recommendation, that we do reject this and rebid.
All right, Stan, I see your hand is up.
Hey, Bob, I noticed there's some, looks like they're making asphalt or some sort of stone or gravel and adding tar to it over there behind the Field of Dreams back there along 309. Do you know what's going on over there?
Yes, it's part of the township resurfacing project for local roads. Since we have the space back there, since the years that I've been here, we allow the township to have the contractor park there and stage their material in that location. It doesn't affect any of our operations, and it is helping the township and their contractor out.
Yeah. Are they going to clean up that site when they're done, or can we also utilize that system on any of these parking lots?
I wouldn't use that system for the parking lots, since we did have some milling that needed to be done. They're usually putting that coating over roads that are in fairly good shape. They just want an extra coating to buy some additional life. I think we're out of that portion of our parking lots. We're a little beyond the help with that. But they are going to clean up the site every year that they've been there. They reclaim the material. They'll regrade any rough spots back there that they created with their equipment. So it actually makes a little bit of a smoother area for us and for anybody who's parking back there. It does help out a little bit.
So we're saving the townships some money there by letting them utilize our, that area. Is that correct?
I'm not sure how much we're saving, but we are definitely providing convenience for them.
Okay.
It's much easier. They can keep a better eye on the contractor and the materials as well, right outside their office.
All right. One last question. With these, you're saying rebid these 2 parking lots. Wasn't this this project? Didn't we approve funding a contractor to help with the bid process to get things approved, or to make sure that these contractors were bidding on the right size parking lots in the right areas. Do you think they failed us by
No,
the one
No.
contractor not missing a lot of the places that needed to be redone?
no, I don't think our contractor failed us at all. I think they did a good recommendation. It was something that was a little easy to be missed, but it's something that we know to address better on the next bid. I actually think they saved us money. Like I mentioned, we were going to mill the entire parking lots, which would have had a significantly higher cost if we had to do that. They were able to reduce that area of milling and just do overlay in those areas. But the other unexpected, which they've been helping us on, is they did discover those areas where the subsurface needs to be repaired before we can mill and pave over that section again. They've been the go-between between us and the township engineers, because all that work does need approval and does need permits. Usually to repave, you don't need permits, but once you start digging up the subsurface, it gets into permit requirements. So they've been very detailed about where those areas are. They put everything together for the township to review. So when we move forward, so we didn't issue permits or ask for permits yet, because the township needs to see who the contractor is before the permit's issued. But Hunt Engineering did work early on with the township to get this in front of them, so we understand what was going to be required, and they have an idea of the job. So when we do file the permit, they already have the information and have reviewed it already. So it should be a very smooth process.
Okay, so when we rebid this and put it out again, is this contractor going to recharge us the same amount of money, or is this is a one-shot deal and we don't have to worry about it again?
No, we don't have to worry about their fees again.
Okay.
We purchased this package for them. We
Okay.
did the bid advertising ourselves. That was all handled in-house. So we have the information. They're going to update, just make some more clarity on the one document. But other than that, no, it's a package that we purchased. It's in our hands to send out to bid whenever we want it. No additional charge from the consultants.
Okay, and if we don't find another contractor, what is the latest that these asphalt mills will be open till? Do you think they'll be open till December, or it all depends on how warm the temperatures will be?
It depends on the weather, what the temperatures are outside. They do have, you can get asphalt over the winter, but it's usually at an increased cost. And there is an escalation clause in the contract. We worked with our solicitor on the actual bid document, and they said typical for paving is anytime cost increase over a certain amount, the contractor can be paid for those additional costs. So we really do want to stay away from winter months. But the biggest thing where I don't want to do anything right now is with potential students coming back, I do not want to be doing paving work and milling work while the students are in school. That's why we made this a really aggressive project to try to sneak this in before the students came back. And so we pushed pretty hard to get this done.
Great, thank you, Bob.
Okay, Art.
You may have answered the question, Bob. We're going to have a lot of cars around those 3 elementary schools in the future. Is there any work that you think needs to be done as an emergency basis to help those driveways, those areas?
An emergency basis, no. We did some patching. If anything pops up hole-wise, we can patch until, we can just go get cold patch and patch it ourselves until the time comes. There is some work I want to look at. There's one curb at Fort Washington that really has deteriorated. I don't want to wait. And that work can be done. It's only a small section. We can work around everybody with that.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, so the recommendation from the administration is to reject these bids and rebid again over the winter. Is the committee comfortable with that recommendation?
I concur.
Yes, I agree, yes.
Yes.
Yep, me too. Okay, so we'll move that forward to the legislative meeting. Thank you for that, Bob. Next up is our disposal of excess, obsolete, and non-repairable equipment. We haven't had one of these in several months. This month, the list is dominated by a lot of very old computers, and I'm wondering, where were all those old computers? Were they actually in classrooms, or did you find
No, this is a list that we get. We really haven't discussed these previously during the committee meetings. A lot of times they were just put on a list for the board to take a look at. We talked about this. This is something for transparency that we feel just to keep in line with all of our other policies that, we should bring this up and discuss it. This is a once-a-year list that's put together by TMS. And it's just the older computers, but a lot of it this year is the old Chromebooks. The Chromebooks that were replaced, the lease was up, they become ours, the older Chromebooks. This is all of that equipment. And we deal with an electronics recycler, Sycamore International, that we've been dealing with them for several years. They go through the equipment, they wipe any hard drives, the information, let us give us a certificate that everything's been cleaned, and then they put these on the market. There are value. Some of this equipment has value. We had a few years in a row where we had a lot of CRT monitors that didn't have any value. And Sycamore worked with us on the price of the items that did have value, so it was a wash. So there were companies that wanted to charge us to cart away these old monitors and some of our electronics. We've never gone below a break-even point with Sycamore, and last year we actually came out on top a little bit. So they will evaluate this equipment, the market value. They haul it away. They send their crews out. We have it in storerooms. They send their crews out. We show them where it is. They load it up. We have a very detailed inventory of every piece of equipment that they take. They bring it back, evaluate it, and they'll usually later on in the year, another list will come back out with a check for all the recycle value.
All right. Any comments or questions from the committee or the rest of the board?
Mark, I did want to mention one other item on this list. I really just want to talk about significant items. We have one of our old grounds pickup trucks. A lot of rust, a lot of work if we wanted to maintain it. We did have a new truck to replace this one. So we do want to advertise this truck. We want to put it on Obsolete, but we also want to advertise it on Municipid. We've had very good luck with Municipid. There is a market for this type of vehicle on Municipid. So we can, instead of the money we would have gotten on a trade-in or scrap value, that we can probably do pretty well with this pickup truck on Municipid.
Yeah, relatively low miles given its age, but I know the condition is not fantastic. All right, so as always with these lists, any in the public who are interested in these items can contact the administration. But it sounds like, is the committee ready to move that one forward to the legislative meeting?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, please.
All right, so we will move that forward. Moving on to the finance items, starting with the transfer of funds to cover food service.
Yeah, so we have transfer from the general fund to food service that we must approve this month. And I think it's just worthwhile to spend a couple minutes to walk through what these items are so everyone understands. So when we have a transfer from one fund to another, this type of transfer does require board approval. The first two on the list are for the same purpose. They are to remove student debt balances for unpaid meals from the 2018-19 and 2019-20 year from the food service fund financials. So per food service fund requirements as defined by PDE, the food service fund is no longer allowed to carry these debt balances that students leave at the end of the year. And what we are required to do is the general fund assumes the expense of that debt. So these overdue balances are a result of the PA school code stating that school districts are no longer permitted to turn any student away from a meal, even if they don't have sufficient funds to pay for the meal. So, if you've heard anything about the lunch shaming, this is what it's associated with. So no student can be denied a meal, regardless of if they have funds or not. So Kristen and her team, they do have a process to notify parents of students who don't have funds in their account. But that's all we can do is have a process. Kristen knows who the overdue accounts are. She has an automated message that gets pushed out to parents with emails to let them know. And then we can only do the best we can to collect there. But you can see those overdue balances, over $6,600 for 18-19 and over $4,800 for 19-20. And that was only through March 12th. As you know, we went into a virtual option after March 12th. So that's what those first two items are related to. The second or the third item on the list is related to the CARES PCCD grant for 19-20. So these grants, and again, we'll talk more about that under our other financial reports, were for incremental costs related to that school districts incurred related to COVID. And that included all of our operations, including food service. So Kristen Deli in our food service department did have additional supplies that she needed to send meals home. As you know, she was back up and running a week after the shutdown occurred to continue providing food for our free and reduced lunch student population, to continue to make sure students throughout our community were fed. And that did require additional costs, so you can see those there. Now, just to make sure it's clear, you shouldn't see these in the future because now we're aware of the money, we know about the money, and if she has purchases she needs to make that apply to our CARES funding, we just purchase those directly out of those funds in the general fund. But when this first started, we weren't aware of the CARES funds. Those didn't come out until closer to the end of the year. So we did retroactively go back to March 13th, which is when the grants became effective, and identified all of those costs in food service that did apply to the CARES funding. So we're looking to move $13,971.08 from the general fund to the food service fund to cover these three items.
All right, and Andy, why are there 2 years of unpaid lunch debt this year?
Yep. So this is a fairly recent change that that school districts are no longer allowed to carry this debt forward. So this is cleaning up all overdue balances from these last 2 years just to get it current.
And so back in 17-18, I'm sure we had unpaid lunch debt. I haven't gone back to look, but that we did carry. We don't need to transfer to cover that. You know, why is it the law requires us to cover 2 years, or why is it 2 years?
Jen, do you know anything about the prior years? If we cleared those as part of our processes? I do know these 2 years have not been cleared.
Right. In previous years, the transfers were done and board approved as well. Just recently, like Andy had mentioned, that there was a lot more changes with how to handle the bad debt and what was the best way between whether it be carried in food service or general fund. So in the past, it was done as a transfer and handled. It was just between these 2 years, there was a lot of different legislation going back and forth to decide how it was going to be handled. So this is to take care of the 2 years.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Jen. I thought I remembered doing those transfers in the past, but I'm surprised I didn't catch that we missed 18-19.
Yeah.
All right. Stan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, a couple questions. Andy, the first, the unpaid lunches, wouldn't that come out of the cafeteria fund? From what I remember, it had a balance, or is that balance totally gone now?
No, the food service fund does have a balance, but the food service fund, that you are not allowed to pay for those overdue balances out of the food service fund. That's part of the regulations that came out. So while it does have a balance, it cannot pay for bad debt.
So we have to pay it out of the general fund.
We are required to pay it out of the general fund. That's correct.
And what about the $2,400 from the CARES? Could that be reimbursed through submitting the grant application through the grant system of the CARES?
That's
No?
what
Yeah.
Well, we have a grant like that. We have an allocation for the CARES PCCD fund. So all we're doing is these were originally paid out of the food service fund because we didn't have it when we incurred these expenses. So it was incurred in that fund. Now we're saying we have the grant funds. We're taking those expenses out of the food service fund and applying them. So we're moving the expense to the general fund, but we're moving it to the PCCD grant. So that's actually an expense line item under the general fund.
Okay, got it. This is just a question that I have here. What is the percentage, if you may not know that, but you can always email to me later. What is the percentage of that $6,600? Because since that was a full year, that was unpaid, those unpaid lunches. Do you know the percentage of monies that is that, we can say, oh, it's only 2% of the kids didn't pay their lunches, just so that we have that knowledge?
Not off the top of my head, Mr. Rovsky, but we can absolutely get that percentage.
Because it doesn't seem like a lot to me. I don't know, but it's acceptable, I guess, Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else have comments or questions on this item? All right, so members of the committee, we'll move that one forward to the legislative meeting.
I concur.
Thanks, Mike. I didn't hear from Stan or Amy.
Yes.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you. So we'll move that forward, and moving on to the monthly financial statements. Andy.
Yeah, so I do want to cover a couple of items here, highlight a couple of things. So if you're looking at the treasurer's reports from August, the tax collections on there, which is revenue 6111 real estate tax collections, you can see remain in line with prior years. The treasurer's report, it appears to actually be about $5 million ahead of last year when you compare from the end of August this year to the end of August last year. But it's important to note that last year, August 31st was actually on a Sunday. And we had a similar instance occur last year where August looked much lower than August the prior year because a lot of those revenues, because they were collected over that weekend, the deposits didn't occur until September. It looks out of line year over year, but it's very much in line, and we'll see it sort of come back in line when we see it in September. The other item to note there is Prudential. Again, we've talked much about Prudential in the past and the settlement that we have with Prudential. There's a remaining credit that we owe to Prudential this year of $684,000. They paid their entire bill at discount in August. So we will actually have a large refund that will be due to them just because they overpaid their tax bill. So that overpayment is all reflected in this number. And then you'll see in September, there will likely be a large credit that we send back to them per the settlement stipulation. As of the end of August, our collections represent about 85% collection rate to our overall billing, and about 9.85 million is still to be collected. And I added a report in the other financial reports, which we'll look at, which is page 3 over there, which has all the details of the tax collector collections. So that'll be a report now that'll stay part of here. So the board and anyone reviewing our financial statements can see actually the details of what's being collected month by month in the current year as compared to the prior year. The other thing to keep in mind here is the resolution that was passed with for our 2021 budget. The penalty period, the board agreed to reduce the penalty from 10% to 0%. So what's unknown now, we've collected 85% of our taxes in the discount period, which is solid. It allows us cash flow to continue operations with really no issues. But what's unknown now is what's going to happen with the collection of that $9.8 million that remains. If most people now will just wait till the end of December to pay that, since there's no penalty to do so. So we'll continue to watch that and report back and see how that trends out. The other piece I'll mention just on the treasurer's reports is the EIT collections remain about $220,000 ahead of last year. Again, we're working with Berkheimer. We continue to work with them. We don't have any updated unemployment information. The last I have is from our June actual numbers that said around 10% unemployment. But again, while we look ahead there, it's a good reminder that taxes were able to be filed. The tax filing date was pushed back to July 15th. So Berkheimer does believe that much of our increased tax collections this year are a result of many folks waiting until that July 15th deadline to file their taxes. So again, we'll continue to monitor that as we move through this. On the other financial report package, page 2, the report was updated to include monthly details for new developments. So Dr. Levinowitz made a suggestion last month to sort of break that out. So that middle section is a summary of all the details under the monthly detail of changes below. So now you'll see by month what's happening as basic changes versus with all of the new development that's happening out there.
And that's an additional assessed values that occurred this month.
Additional assessed values, yes.
Right. Okay, that was my question.
Yes, that's correct. And then as I mentioned, page 3 is the new report showing the details of the monthly tax collections. So again, the collection percentage, the trend is around 97.3%. And our budget reflects a reduction to 95.3%. So again, this gives you all the details to see that we've collected 85.6 of a projected 95.3% this year. And again, we'll continue to monitor. I'm not sure how we'll see if most of that will be backlogged in December, but you'll get this on a monthly basis and we'll be able to talk about it. So those are my highlights, but I'll certainly answer any other questions that you might have about any of these reports.
Let's see, let's go to Mike.
Hi, this is a question for either Mr. Leckman or Dr. Yanni. With us looking to move to in-person instruction in November, are we starting to get any information, any data from any other school districts that are doing in-person instruction and pricing from the MCIU on the cost of COVID-related purchases of things like PPE, additional cleaning supplies, the additional labor to clean? Are we starting to get a feel for how much essentially additional expenses we're going to incur starting if we go back live in November?
So Mr. Henderson, through the conversations we've had with our superintendent group, the districts that are back, even in a hybrid situation, are burning through their CARES and ESSER funds pretty rapidly. So I would, as of today, I will tell you that we will expend both of those pots of money, and how quickly we spend that money. I mean, we have to spend the money by the deadline at the end of October, but future projections will be based on how quickly cleaning supplies, hand sanitizer, wipes, etc. are used. So we won't have a good projection on that until we resume in-person instruction. But based upon what we're hearing from other districts, they're burning through their funds pretty quickly.
So at a certain point, we're going to have to start taking that into account and seeing where that additional funds will be coming from once we burn through the federal government funds, correct?
Right. And that once we bring kids back and we see how quickly we move through those materials, that's really when we'll have a much better idea of what additional costs will incur through the general fund of the budget and what money would have to be transferred, or what other items wouldn't be, we wouldn't spend money on to account for the extra expenditures.
Just one other question. The MCIU is providing us with economic order quantity pricing for the materials.
So the MCIU did put together a bid package that all school districts did participate in. We purchased a number of supplies off of that bid as well. That bid has been wrapped up and closed, but they have absolutely put out and said, hey, we finished one. Once everyone sees where they're at and how they're using things, we'll open up another bid and go through the same process. So they are absolutely facilitating that for us. And the other thing I would say, Mr. Henderson, to add on to what Dr. Yanni said, is we do have an inventory model that we've sort of put in place to keep track of hand sanitizers, wipes, cleaning supplies that are out there that we've purchased for these purposes. So we'll be able to see by building who's using how much supplies and how quickly it's being used almost in real time. It's being stored in a central location, and as it's distributed, that'll be updated. So we'll be able to track that pretty closely when we start using those supplies.
Okay, thank you very much.
Andy, is the lion's share of the additional cost from COVID things, is it really about supplies, or is the lion's share of it in staff time?
No, there's really no staff time right now. It's all supplies. It's an item that's on the agenda tonight for the Chromebook purchase. It is cleaning products and equipment that we needed to do enhanced cleaning. So yes, it's all supplies and equipment.
Okay, great. Art, you've got your hand up?
Yes, I do. Andy, the other budget page document that you referred to, I just, to you and Jen, I just again would like to thank both of you for putting this document together, and also including some of the items that I recommended. I think page 2 and showing the monthly increase or decrease in additional assessments is extremely helpful. And just as an FYI, I know that Promenade has Sprouts opening September 30th. That's a definite. So I'm very curious to see how that gets assessed. It's just one of the largest pieces, at the Promenade. And I believe some individuals went to settlement also in the Enclave. So we might see some additional assessment in there too. And the Regency is just finishing up. They're just about done. But again, thank you so much for putting this document together. You and Jen did an incredible job. And I know it's something that the board has asked for over many years, and it's a great resource for all of us and the community.
Yeah, I strongly agree. Thank you very much for this document. And speaking of the Promenade, since we know that at least portions of it are opening soon, how does that work since it's primarily a rental property? Do we, when does it all come on at once? Do we have any
ask that
idea?
question, Andy?
It's interesting you asked that, because we were just talking about that today. I have actually asked that question of our solicitor that we work with on assessments, and I've not gotten a clear answer on how that works. I assume it will be reassessed throughout the project, but that's something I will continue to ask questions on to understand better, because I have the same question on how it's not like a house now comes online and it has an assessment and it's it's part of the tax rolls. It's a whole leased facility, and it's going to come on in phases. So I will absolutely be learning more about that and asking lots of questions and bringing that info back as I have it.
We should see some additional assessment in next month's report. And Dr. Yanni, quickly, I thought the county was also working with us to get some PPE. Did that not occur?
So the county did provide some buying power for us. Mr. Leckman, do you remember what we actually were able to secure from Montgomery County?
So the county, we initially purchased hand sanitizers, wipes, and there was one other item. We were going to get gloves, but their vendor wasn't able to get those. So yes, the county absolutely did get some stuff for us right away. And then we went through the bid process with MCIU to procure additional items.
The other thing that I'd just like to make note of, I really want to thank Mr. Leckman and Mr. Lester and also Ms. Baldessano for proactively getting a supply of PPE and cleaning supplies in, because as you can imagine, there's some price gouging going on right now. So, for instance, boxes of gloves have been marked up 30, 40, almost 50%. So we're really thankful for their proactive approach in making sure that we have those things on hand.
All right, so unless anyone on the committee is opposed, we'll move those forward. Let me ask it the other way. Is everyone ready to move that forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to everybody's favorite topic. It's never not budget season.
Yeah, so as is pretty standard on an annual basis, September is sort of the time when we begin to talk about the budget process already for next year. So what I have before you tonight is a rough draft of a timeline that we're looking. I think it's probably less draft through the preliminary budget in December and more draft as we look out, just because some of the dates for our committee meetings and legislative meetings aren't locked in yet. So, you know, the attached document lays out the draft timeline for 2021. Page 1, what I just wanted to include with this timeline is some key information that, you know, I'm thinking about as we start to think about how we're even going to do budget for the 21-22 school year, with how many unknowns we closed the 2021 budget process out with last year, how many unknowns still exist around revenues, local revenues, expenditures that we're going to need, how long we're going to need additional, you know, to Mr. Henderson's question, how much longer are we going to need to purchase additional cleaning supplies for, and what that even looks like. So, you know, there are so many unknowns at this point, but one of the things we're doing, again, I think to Dr. Levinowitz's point and Mr. Sirota's point, is these reports that we're looking at on a monthly basis are going to help us. We need to continue on a month-to-month basis, look at how things are trending, what we know about new expenditures. You know, we should be getting more information around how many students are enrolled in charter schools coming out. So a lot of these things will start to become more clear. But you know, a lot of the information that we would typically start with this early in the year is really grayer than it even is typically 10 months out in starting to prepare for the budget. So we are going to continue forward with our needs-based budget philosophy. Again, you know, Dr. Yanni started that the year before I started to some extent. It grew last year, and our building principals and department directors did a great job last year in preparing a needs-based budget, you know, in spite of everything we are dealing with, and we will continue forward with that. But some of that detailed work will be pushed out into the January, February, March timeframe, as I just don't see a lot of value in starting that detailed, detailed work for our budget building needs-based now in October and November, when there's just so much unknown. So when I look at the budget process this year, I'm really looking at now some of the trends that we've been reporting on. Next month and November, starting to talk about our assumptions in our next year and 5-year budget model, and making sure we're all in agreement on some of those major assumptions that we need to look at. And looking at major factors in the budget that could play an impact on next year, such as I mentioned, charter school students. We know there's an increase in charter school students right now, so those major items we'll look to make sure we have built into the preliminary. But again, some of that nitty-gritty needs-based department building level work will move back into the January to March timeframe, and we'll go from there. What we know right now is the Act 1 index has not been finalized or published yet, but it's estimated to be 3% for next year. So really the key date that we're looking towards is really November and December is when the board will need to make a decision on if we move forward with either the preliminary budget process, which forces us to put a detailed budget together and says we're going to apply for exceptions to go beyond the index for special ed and PSERS or the state pension system related purposes, or if we're going to approve the Act 1 opt-out resolution, which basically says we are going to pass a final budget that is at or below the Act 1 index. So that's really the key step we're moving towards now, and that needs to be completed by December. But again, if the decision is to move forward with the opt-out resolution, we can almost move that up to November. after we review a detailed preliminary version of the budget at the November Finance Committee meeting. So that's the process that we're looking at. Again, it's tentative at this point, it's draft form, and we'll continue to update this throughout the year. But you know, it's that time of year to start talking about it. So I wanted to get this out here, and then we'll get the process started. So I'd be happy to take any questions about the tentative draft timeline or the budget process for this year.
All right, so as the board looks forward to our first big decision regarding next year's budget, which is whether to take the opt-out resolution or apply for exceptions and do a preliminary budget, do COVID closures, are they likely to have any impact on the special ed exceptions we might be eligible for?
So the special ed exceptions, and Ms. Baldessano, feel free to jump in here. So that looks at special ed expenses over basically the last 2 years, I believe. So I'm not sure that'll have a huge change this year, because last year we paid everybody, we had expenditures through the end of the year. But we will absolutely be doing the calculation, probably for the November meeting. We'll have that all done to show you what would be available for us. So we will have a estimate of those numbers as the board works to make that decision.
Okay, thanks. Art, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think some board members, and I'm sure the community is surprised to hear that the Act 1 index could be as high as 3. And Mr. Leckman or Dr. Yanni just speak about how that index, really a lagging index?
Yeah, so I'll start, and then Mr. Leckman can certainly jump in. I think collectively, school district administrators across the Commonwealth were shocked when we learned what the Act 1 index was going to be, because the picture that was painted last year was not rosy at all.
Can I just interrupt real quickly, Dr. Yanni, just as a reminder, the Act 1 index, just to be absolutely clear for everybody, has not formally been announced yet. That's a forecast.
Right.
Yes, go ahead.
So thank you. So, the forecasted Act 1 index, did take everyone a little bit by surprise, but I know PASBO has been very clear about it being a lagging indicator of the economy. And if you think back to the last recession, the Act 1 index went from a high of around 4%. I can't remember what the actual numbers were. And in a very short period of time, we were back down as low as 1.4, 1.7, and 1.9. Mr. Leckman, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is just the factors are the employer cost index and the statewide average weekly wage. So that it looks back over multiple years for those two items. So that's why it's a lagging indicator, because COVID sort of, it's still happening. We're still seeing the impact of that right now. Looking back, the economy was very strong for the last 10 years. So, it's a lagging indicator. When you look back at 2008, to Dr. Yanni's point, the 2 years when the financial collapse sort of happened, those 2 years, the Act 1 index was still relatively normal. And then it was the next 5 years that the Act 1 index dropped down and sort of stayed low for those couple of years.
I also want to point out that despite many of the education, or most of the education line items in the state budget being funded on paper for 12 months, the vast majority of the Pennsylvania Commonwealth budget was only a partial year budget. So we will keep the board, the Finance Committee and the board, apprised every step of the way, because as budget negotiations at the state level really ramp up, there's a real belief that some funding that has been dedicated to education, and not just K-12, but also early childhood and post-secondary education, there will be rerouting of some of that money. So there will be, I assume, many legislative updates that come out over the next couple of months.
All right. So that was an informational item. Just any last questions about the process and timeline for next year's budget? Okay, let's move on to the FSA and dependent care account proposal.
Yep. So as a benefit to employee, which I think has become a standard benefit across many employers, we do offer our employees eligible for district benefits, a flexible spending account, and dependent care accounts. Most employers utilize a third-party administrator to manage these accounts to make sure regulations are met and followed. So we've used an administrator task that goes, back a number of years, well before my time, and my understanding is there's been issues with them all along, and I myself have had a number of issues with them just this year. So working with our HR department, we've decided it's time to make a change rather than to continue to have issues with our current vendor. We have reached out, we have given them 6 to 9 months to make some of these changes. So we decided it was time to start to look around. Our HR department did go out and talk to a couple of different vendors, and we did land on Ameriflex, which is a large, well-respected company in this space. And when you look at costs, it is very similar to what we're paying TAS. Actually, it's a quarter cheaper per employee per month. So it's $3.25 per employee per month compared to $3.50 per month. So our recommendation is to make this change effective. It would be effective January 1, 2021 for our FSA and dependent care administrator.
So just to clarify for everyone's benefit, this does not change the benefits at all. This is only who is administering it for us.
That is correct. Everything remains the same. It's just the administrator will change.
All right. Any other comments or questions on this? We have an existing contract that expires at the end of December. Is that why the timing is as it is?
So these plans typically run on a calendar basis. So that's why it ends up being January 1st that we're looking to make this change.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, members of the committee, we're prepared to move this forward.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
All right, so that one will be moved forward to the legislative meetings. Next up, a purchase of an additional 100 Chromebooks.
Sure, and Dr. Yanni, feel free to jump in here if you want to cover this one.
Sure. So during the period of virtual learning, we're using almost all of the devices that we have on hand. And for folks that might be listening, Chromebooks definitely have a life expectancy, and we're using them harder now than ever before. The decision was made to use some of the stimulus funding to make sure not only that we have a reserve for devices that break down, but also that we could replace devices as they become either damaged or they're just nearing the end of life. The pricing that we have is quite good and it's quite competitive. The challenge is we were guaranteed an 8-week turnaround time, which is fine, and actually it's better than fine for us because we're not in need of them tomorrow. We were able to work with our representatives to make sure that we were prioritized. There have been districts that have been waiting all summer for devices, so we're comfortable with the pricing that we have here, and we believe that this is a prudent purchase, not only now so that we have devices, but these are devices that are going to be used continually, once we return to school as well.
All right, and I'll just add that just to answer a question that is probably out there, these are the same model as the existing Chromebooks.
They are.
That we have.
They are, correct.
Stan.
Yeah. Does anybody know what the lifespan is of these Chromebooks? And I mean,
Sure.
I'm having
So-
issues with mine. I mean, is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Because mine's 3 years old.
So
It might be
typically-
older than that, but I had it for 3 years.
Sure. So typically, Mr. Ropsky, anywhere between 3 to 5 years is usually the sweet spot. If they're taken care of well, and they're cared for, you can get up to 5 years. But typically, starting around midway through the third year and definitely into the fourth year, The service contract is no longer valid on them, and that's because they're not made to be long-term devices, and that's reflected in the price point that we're able to get them for. So between 3 and 5 years.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, members of the committee will move that one forward to the legislative meeting as well.
Yes.
Yes, please.
All right. So that concludes this section of the agenda. Our next item is community input. So as a reminder, anyone who's attending the meeting, if you would like to speak, please go ahead and raise your hand now, and I will call on you in order. When it is your turn, I will enable you. You'll get a notice. You can unmute yourself and start speaking. Please start with your name and what portion of the township you live in. Let me first ask Mr. Leckman, did we receive anything from the community outside of the meeting, before the meeting?
We did not.
Okay. All right. So I see one hand up. Ms. Kuznets, go ahead.
Hi there, Jen Kuznets, Fort Washington. I just wanted to actually get a little clarification. It wasn't something that was necessarily discussed tonight, about the bathrooms on the school property being open for athletes. I know a bunch of porta potties were brought in, but it's not necessarily appropriate for girls of a certain age when it's a certain time of the month for them. They need sinks and faucets and to be able to wash their hands and access to the bathrooms. And we can't seem to figure out who ordered them locked down like this. Seems like nobody did, because I can't figure out who's responsible for that, but I'd like to implore that to whoever that is to please open them up for practices, especially for our female athletes. And then I had also heard that technically the board does not need to vote to reopen the buildings to in-person learning. And so I guess I'm just wondering if somebody could explain the process as to how we get the buildings open. Is it a vote by the board? Is it administration decides? How does that work? And I know about the metrics, but I'm wondering if it needs to come to a vote or not. Thank you.
You're muted, Mark.
I apologize. Go ahead, Ms. Vitella.
Hi, how are you?
Go ahead, we hear you.
Mark, you're muted again.
I cannot hear Ms. Vitella. Does anybody hear Ms. Vitella? No, okay.
No.
No.
Ginny, I see that you're unmuted, but I do not hear you. Let's try that. Ginny, can you try again now?
There I am. Am I good now?
You're good now.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. So I had the same bathroom question. It has been going around all over. So we've emailed various people, have emailed various people. We've gotten various different answers. And then just curious if the bathrooms are open at Cardinal Stadium, like when do they get open? When do they get closed? And I assume we have people on staff to clean them. Bob, thank you for mentioning the curbs. I actually had that on my list to ask about what the update was on the paving project and that curb at Fort Washington that has been a crumbling mess for years and years and years. And it cannot be considered safe at any, for years it hasn't been safe. I don't think so. I'm glad to know that you are working on that. Thank you very much. I'm just kind of curious about why our buildings seem to be on total and complete lockdown. Obviously, the vote by the board to invoke the emergency education plan until November occurred on July 27th. And everything seemed to lock down at that moment when I felt like in that meeting, we discussed that certain things would still kind of happen like sports or activities. And at this point, not only the bathrooms, but like the trainer has to move her table outside because if an injured player comes in, they can't get treated inside the building. No clubs are meeting, although I think many could meet in a safe distance. And there were seniors that were celebrating their first day of school like they typically do over the years in the parking lot, and they were kicked out of the parking lot. There's zero access to our very expensive and very gorgeous and very wonderful pool, when I know that we're allowed to have up to 25 people inside the buildings. And technically in a moderate scenario, we could be hybrid. And it seems that hybrid doesn't mean that kids are in school for class on this day or that day, but hybrid can mean we could have some people in the building with some access some of the time, under the safety, under the rules and regulations as defined by the state of Pennsylvania. Another situation was practices or other are canceled because there might be thunderstorms and they're not allowed to shelter in place inside the building, even at 6 feet, less than 25, with masks on. And it just seems a little shame. I'm just curious why everything seems on total and complete lockdown. I don't know if that was the original intent back in July 27th. The good news is there's been 0 cases in Upper Dublin in the last 5 days. I think that's amazing. There's only been 51 cases in the last 68 days in Upper Dublin. That is a good trend. And it seems like the thing that's being held back right now is any access to the buildings. Also, in an effort to get back into person, whether that's special ed, elementary, or everybody, are we looking into room cameras for the teachers so that they can also teach, not just staring at a computer, and plexiglass dividers? Are those on the list? Are we looking at them? I know we mentioned hand sanitizers and that sort of cleanup equipment, but how about safety equipment and education equipment like other school districts seem to be doing? Thank you.
Mark, you're muted.
Mark and mute.
Oh, please go ahead, Lisa Burns. Ms. Burns, you'll need to unmute yourself. You're still muted.
Can you hear me?
Now we do, yep.
I'm sorry about that. Hi, this is Lisa Burns from Fort Washington. And so much of what was spoken on this call tonight pertains to the return to in-person learning. Can you please let us or the community know which board members will be attending the town hall meeting that Dr. Yanni is hosting on Thursday night, as the community really feels that the school board members need to be part of this critical question and comment discussion of the town hall. As you heard tonight, there's still a lot of questions that we have and concerns that we have, and we'd like to know that all will be participating in that town hall. I'd also like to know when people, this is my first time on asking questions, when did the questions that I'm asking or Ginny's asking or Jen's asking, when did they get answered? Do they get answered on this call, or did they get answered in an email or in the minutes? If somebody could help us out with closing the loop on that, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will, so the way this works is that we take everybody's input and then address it where it's appropriate. Several of these questions were questions for the administration. There are a couple for the board. I'll take a quick shot at a couple and then I'm going to pass it to you, Dr. Yanni. In terms of when are questions answered, so let me just explain for the whole community. The purpose of community input is not so much for questions, it's really for advising the board before the board takes action on things, which this could count as, because we may have to take action if we don't do an all open on November 9th, if we do anything other than that, that's what we approved on at the end of July. So if we do something else, we would need to take action. So some of those questions will be answered now. The questions that can't be answered now will be answered, if they can be, they'll be answered directly by email or that sort of thing later. The answers will not usually appear in the minutes. In terms of who's attending the town hall, well, that's up to each board member. It's really an administration activity. So if the board does attend, they'll only be listening. Of course, board members are welcome to listen later as well, because it will be, the entire presentation will be available later. I will say for myself, I am already booked on Thursday night, so I will not be listening live, but I will take the time to listen later. Let's pass it along to Dr. Yanni for anything else.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Sirota. I want to assure everyone, I confirmed today that bathrooms at Spark, Field of Dreams, and Cardinal Stadium will be opened. I do apologize. I thought they were open in the past. I did not know that they were closed. So we did confirm today. A student reached out and asked if they could be open. I did some investigating and they will be open. So thank you to the student that reached out. Regarding the resuming in-person instruction, Mr. Sirota is correct that the board will vote if we do anything prior to November 9th, or if conditions worsen and we have to extend virtual instruction past November 9th. Tomorrow night at our virtual town hall, I'll be talking about a number of options that we're exploring to provide choice for families. Several of those things will require a board vote, but I think it's important to note that the administration and the board are working collaboratively and collectively toward the common goal of being able to provide choice for students and families to resume in-person instruction if they so choose, and also to allow for students and families to remain in the Cardinal Academy if that's their desire as well. As far as buildings being on lockdown, tomorrow night in the virtual town hall, just like we are going to talk about reevaluating a number of things, we're also going to be reevaluating what use of buildings will look like. So I will hold that for tomorrow night. I will circle back with the high school administration regarding the parking lot issue that we had, or that was mentioned this evening. What I was told, I looked back at my notes that students were told to distance and then they were told to leave right before 8:30, which was be the start of instructional time. If that didn't happen, I'll take care of that with the high school. In terms of what we're doing inside classrooms for resuming in-person instruction, I want to be clear, and we're actually going to speak about this in some greater detail at the virtual town hall tomorrow evening. Live streaming from classrooms is a very passive way to learn, and some folks are not going to agree with that statement, and that's fine. But we, at this point, although it may change, we're not looking at live streaming from classrooms. Live streaming from classrooms, when some kids are in the classroom and others are watching from home, it creates some inequities and experiences. So we have some workarounds for that. In terms of dividers, when we're distancing kids, if they're in rooms with desks where we're able to distance, there will not be dividers. We are looking at dividers for instances where, if you think of a science lab where, it's impossible to distance kids at a science lab table, we were looking at dividers for those types of situations. We're also looking at dividers, despite the fact that we're going to use multiple locations for cafeterias or for kids to eat so that we can appropriately distance them out. There may be some situations where we still need to use dividers there. Tomorrow night at the virtual town hall meeting, we're actually going to walk through and talk through what school is going to look like and feel like when we do resume in-person instruction, because it will look and feel a little bit differently, or a lot differently based on your perspective, than what it normally looks like when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. So I think I answered everything. I do look forward to the virtual town hall tomorrow night. And I do want to thank everyone that submitted questions. Any of the questions that we don't get to tomorrow night, we will be producing an updated frequently asked question document, and we will see everyone tomorrow evening for the virtual town hall.
All right, thank you, Dr. Yanni. I see a couple of board and committee members have their hands up. Let's start with Mr. Ropsky.
Yeah, I will be attending the town hall. I do have a meeting in Allentown at 6 o'clock. However, I'll have my phone with me and be able to log on and listen.
Okay, Amy?
Yes, 2 quick points. I will also be on tomorrow night, listening into the town hall. And just so that everyone is aware as well, Dr. Yanni has plans to share the agenda and any supporting materials with the board. That's something we regularly do. So we'll be fully informed and prepared. And in terms of new folks coming to our meetings and learning the systems and the routines about how we answer questions, I'm glad that question was asked this evening. Mr. Sirota, I appreciate your response. Getting to understand the back and forth, or not back and forth really, of our public comment period is somewhat confusing at times for folks, but I thought you answered it well, and I hope our community members who are listening can continue to come back and share their feedback.
For sure. Okay, Mike.
I just wanted to confirm that I'll be also attending the town hall. Thank you.
All right, Jen?
Yes, I will. There is actually another district meeting tomorrow night, the Equity Empowerment Steering Committee, which I'm very excited to attend. And when that finishes, I will join the town hall.
Jeff?
Thanks, Mark. I'll be attending the town hall tomorrow night.
And Titia?
I just want to change the topic slightly. Those of you who paid attention to the Chromebook order noticed that there was a new name on the top of that order. And I think Dr. Yanni will probably say a little bit more at the legislative meeting, but we're very excited that we have a new director of information technology, and that he has started on board this week, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. A big welcome to Mr. Patel. We're glad to have him on board. Darlene?
Just wanted to confirm that I too will be attending the town hall meeting. I think that most of the board members have attended all of the town hall meetings, and certainly will be present to hear what the community has to say.
All right, Art?
Signed up last week for the town hall.
All right, Titia, is your hand up again or still? Okay.
Yeah, I forgot to say I do plan to attend.
All right, so it might be just me who is otherwise booked. So almost a full complement of the board will attend as much of the town hall as they can, and everyone at least will have the opportunity to watch it later. That concludes our agenda. I want to just close with, as we did talk some about reopening schools, hopefully November 9th, it is important that everybody really do their part to keep the numbers down. Everybody needs to wear their mask over both your nose and mouth, keep your distance, wash your hands. Our numbers in Montgomery County are decent, but they have been trending the wrong way for a couple of weeks, and we still probably have not seen the bump that is likely to come from Labor Day weekend. So all of these reopening plans, we all want to reopen, but it is all contingent on getting the virus under control. And right now, while the numbers are decent, they are going the wrong way. So please do your part, everybody do your part, and encourage everyone you know to do their part as well. Our next Finance Committee meeting will be Wednesday, October 21st at 6 p.m. And we are adjourned. Thank you.
Good night. Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Have a great evening.
You too.
So long.